Hi, this is Dr. Emily Park with your next Functional Health Minute. Now I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about what happens during the perimenopausal time frame. So let's start with talking about menopause. The average age of menopause is anywhere between age 50 to 52, but again, that's average. So you could start menopause earlier, and of course, you could start menopause later. And the definition of menopause is no period cycles at all for 12 consecutive months. And that's an important definition to remember. The perimenopausal period can last anywhere from a few months up to several years. Just depends on who you are and what's going on with your hormones and a little bit of luck or not luck, as it turns out. Sometimes when you go through menopause, can be, can run in families. So it kind of, it's nothing genetically inherited specifically, let's say, but, if your, mom, let's say, went through menopause later in life, maybe you would too, or vice versa. If she went through it earlier, you might also, but there's really, so many factors that can control when you will go into menopause. So the perimenopausal timeframe is when you're going to start to see a lot of hormone shifts. And the first one that starts to happen is related to ovulation and your progesterone. So even if you're still ovulating regularly around the perimenopausal timeframe, so this is for most of us, this is in our 40s, late 40s to be more specific. Even if you are still ovulating, the corpus luteum that is responsible for progesterone production after you ovulate, it's not quite as robust as it was when we were in our 20s. So what starts to happen is our progesterone levels kind of start to drop a little bit, and then we get a relative estrogen dominance. So that's where a lot of perimenopausal symptoms are going to come from a relatively low progesterone in relation to the estrogen levels. So the first thing that we do is we support healthy progesterone levels. So in doing that, there's several things that you have to consider. One is supporting the adrenals. That's always really important. And that includes lifestyle things, right? Like making sure you're getting enough good quality sleep, you're exercising enough, but not too much, you're getting good nutrition, you're sleeping well and enough. And so doing those lifestyle things first, but doing some adrenal adaptogens can be really, really helpful also. I really like one called Stress Support that I make. It has ashwagandha, rhodiola, has a bunch of really good adrenal loving herbs in it. So we start with adrenal support, and then we really want to give progesterone a little boost. I really like to use something called chasteberry berry or Vitex. It can be really, really helpful in kind of smoothing out, the period cycles. And then as things kind of progress, as progesterone levels kind of continue to dwindle out, and or we're going to start to get some period cycles where we're not going to ovulate, so periods can come, you can start short cycling, or you could ovulate, and then your luteal phase can start to shorten, so you might start to get periods around day 21, day 23, earlier than you were before. Or you may even get some period cycles where you don't ovulate, and if that happens, a lot of times you end up with a longer cycle. So you might end up with a 40 days in between, and so on and so forth. And depending on what's going on hormonally will dictate how you feel. Those, really high estrogen levels, you might expect, typical symptoms, like you might be irritable, you might have food cravings, you might feel bloated, you might get headaches, those kind of symptoms. And then if estrogen levels are really low, you can also feel irritable, but it's in a different way. And this is where, sleep starts to go. If estrogen levels are low, you'll also, obviously, this is where, the typical symptom of hot flashes, start to happen. But here's the thing: in perimenopause, it can all change in a blink. So it makes it kind of fun to try and manage. But you can have period cycles where that seem relatively normal, and maybe even for a few months in a row or more. And then you may have one where you don't ovulate, and that's a longer cycle, and you have, those symptoms. Or you might have one where you short cycle and ovulate early. And so you can have symptoms of higher estrogens, you can have symptoms of low estrogen, you can have symptoms of, lower progesterone. And so managing that can be challenging during the perimenal time frame, because it can change from month to month. And I've seen this on laboratory values over and over again with my patients over the years. You might check one time and I might see a really high estrogen level, and then we'll start treating that. And then a couple of months later, it's like, whoa, where did your estrogen go? It like drop to zero, and then you start normally periods, cycles again. So it is a bit of a roller coaster. Again, it doesn't mean there's nothing that can be done in the perimenopausal time frame. It's actually quite the opposite. There's a lot that can be done. It just depends on what's going on with your symptoms and your hormones specifically, and then of course all the other things we do in functional medicine in the backdrop, right? Like we're making sure you know nutrition, sleep, exercise and movement, stress management, toxin reduction, nutrient deficiencies are treated, gut health is going really well, detoxification pathways are open. We're wanting to do everything we can to support hormones naturally. This is Dr. Emily Park with your Functional Health Minute.